Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here, Jennifer.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Jennifer, I have a really huge question to ask you because you sent me a video of you exploring spooky castles. Why would anybody want to explore spooky castles? I get it, architecture. Castles are beautiful. I love it. But anything you tell me is haunted, usually most people are like, I don't want to go there unless I know it's fake.
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I grew up in Northern Ireland, so people there do talk about their ghosts like you and I might talk about their pets. So it's kind of normal in my heritage and background to be exposed to like paranormal things like that. So I don't really bat an eye. It does take some courage, that's for sure, but it's fun. That's a guarantee.
What would you all right, because I think every kid has had an imaginary friend, but I feel like some of them were way more realistic than others. Like I used to have this is how my brain went. So like the Geico commercial was really big when I was a kid. So I basically had an imaginary friend that was that lizard, but it was blue, and he didn't really talk, but he had like superpowers and stuff. So he'd always run by the car. But then there were some that I had like remember I had what you could maybe consider a paranormal occurrence, which was I was probably 15, 16 years old, and I was walking through my house, and my mom was pulling out all those old school antique photos of like my grandfather and his uncle and everything. And I was like, who's that? I was like, that's my imaginary friend. Like, how did you guys get a picture of my imaginary friend? And my mom's
Oh,
like,
wow.
that's your uncle or your grandfather's brother that died in a barn fire when he was like 8 years old. And I was like, no way. Cause I remember like I was way too young. I didn't even know like really my grandfather that well. And I was like, and my mom kind of like, like started realizing because ever since I was a kid, I've had some weird stories and stuff of seeing like ghosts and stuff. And it's been, I know it sounds ridiculous to especially like a lot of people listening are like, oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah, sure.
But it's so unexplainable where I've had stuff happen to me paranormal wise and other thing wise where I'm like, it's so closed minded to think that we're the only thing out there. Like even when it comes to aliens, but I always consider ghosts like a radio frequency. Some people are in tune to a different frequency to be able to pick up things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that we can't explain. And really, why should we? It's like you can take them at surface value. You have those experiences, and they're unique to you or your family members or other people that maybe perhaps believe, quote unquote. So, yeah, it's really fascinating. I feel like society sort of brainwashes it out of us, especially when you're young, because you're told, no, you didn't see that, or that's not possible. So you second guess yourself as a young person when really you should be open to your own intuition and your own experience because that's your reality at the time. So who are other people to say it's right or wrong,
I think X
really?
Files does it a big misjustice when it comes to like they show you 50 minutes of trying to find a ghost and then they never show you anything. And then if it is, it's so like ridiculous where it's like nothing. It's like, can movies not glamour it up so much to where it feels like every single ghost is a psycho killer who was like, I don't know, tortured in a dungeon somewhere? And why does it always have to be so dumb as, oh, I heard a noise from a distance away that could have been an airplane that was coming by? It's like, I would love to, if I was going to choose a place to go investigate, I would love to go to Alcatraz because I
Oh, yeah.
think when it comes to ghosts, I don't consider it the spirit that's moved on. I consider it a memory of the person that's been there because as much as we are so minuscule in the grand things of like Earth, I'm like, there's no way that you can live 90, 80 years, be so involved into one place and have so much energy that it just fades away without leaving a small little trace or something small that could be picked up from another device or just maybe another type of perception.
Absolutely, 100%. I think, I don't claim to be any sort of expert in the paranormal, but I have had some experience. I think there's different kinds of hauntings. There is that memory imprint for sure. Objects that somebody was really attached to can have that energy, like you say. And also, I do believe that there are spirits that really just didn't pass on to the light. And I'll give you a good example of what one of my actually hypnosis teachers said to me one time. She said, a lot of people fear, if you're a believer and have a lot of faith and say you believe in God, then you're afraid of God's judgment because maybe you did too much on a Saturday night. So therefore you just don't pass on to the light because you're fearful of the wrath. I mean, I'm not judging anybody in their religious
Immediately, I thought Catholic schoolgirl. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so like guilt. So therefore, yeah, you're not, if you see the light open up, no matter, let's say how people say it's just so much love, right? Then maybe you don't pass through because you're just afraid. So you linger with whatever. That's just one reason why someone may not pass on.
I look at like, because I was never a very religious person, but when I was a little kid, like praying and stuff, I just thought that was what we had to do to make sure we got a gateway. And I feel like that's what kind of everything is a little bit too. Like, if you don't truly actually believe, it's like, I have to do this because then it gets me into heaven. And it's like, if you're just going to be nice because you feel like that's what you ever see the movie This Is the End?
I'm not sure it rings a bell,
It's
but
with James Franco, Seth Rogen, and like every major actor like Jonah Hill. They all go to this party at James Franco's
oh,
house, and everybody plays themselves. But
okay.
the world goes into an apocalypse, and every like half the or most of the population disappears, and then there's like demons and devils walking the earth. So they're trying to survive, thinking it's some like thing that's going to blow over in like a week, like The Mist, kind of. And they started to figure out that it's the apocalypse. So the way to go up to heaven where everybody else is you have to be good. You have to be a good person. That's when they start realizing like, oh my God, we're actors. We're the best people. And it's like, no, we get paid handsomely to be able to be this way. And it's nothing free. And then so they're complimenting each other and trying to do everything they possibly can to get up there, but it's not working. And you have to do all these selfless acts. And that's what led into me. The big picture of things when I got older was like, I get why people turn to religion for sure, but like for a ghost thing, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's something deeper than that for sure. There has to be like, if you look at every major thing when it comes to ghost experiences, religion, every single major scripture, they all seem like they're grasping at the same thing, but there's just like bits and pieces of the same picture. Like everybody's got to form those pieces together.
Yeah, I mean, I can't experience life really in black and white. I live a lot in a gray zone where it's like, who's judging what's right, who's judging what's wrong. It's the person and the personal experiences. So it's a, yeah, super fascinating subject. That's for sure. I mean, there's so many people out there that have amazing experiences of beyond, even like near death experiences or experiences of past lives. So really, who's to judge? Whatever helps you as a person or individual like kind of survive in life and make sense of our reality, then I'm okay with that.
I think we're all grasping at what is reality. I
Yeah.
remember like trying to figure out like what that everyone talks about this white light and stuff. Like I remember somebody tossed a theory out to me was like, if you play like certain games or something, there's certain character games that'll take you through like the birth stages. Like you're a baby and you have to try and evolve from the baby to an adult and then you become your character or whatever. Well, like coming out of the womb, it looks like the bright hospital lights. People say that's the white light. And I'm like, fuck, that makes sense. Like maybe it's not the pearly gates. And then like it's got me in this whole contusion where I'm like, should I just go out and get hit by a car just to tell if there is a heaven or not? Because I've talked to people who've died and come back. And
Yes.
the one dude I talked to that was like really shook my belief. His name is it was either I think it was Billy. I'm 100% sure it's Billy. I know I've said Bobby in the past, but he was a cook I worked with, and he had died 3 times total. One was he was a 9/11 first responder. A second time he was shot like near the head, and somehow didn't hit his brain, which is nuts. And then the third time his heart just stopped. And he said every single time he hadn't seen a white light, he hadn't seen anything. He was just brought back like there was just a time lapse. And I'm like, what shit? I want to ask the questions. And I feel like if you even try and make contact with a ghost, it's way too hard. And I'm too scared to involve a Ouija board.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing that because first and foremost, you'd want to, if you were hypothetically going to try to communicate with a ghost, or I feel like the wisest thing to do would be protect yourself with the white light and come from a good place of intention. I mean, if you're just kind of playing the Ouija board for funs and games, that's where the hyped up Hollywood movies come into play. And you're inviting in anything and everything, and who knows what would come in through that board, right? Versus like if you just specifically asked for someone that could help you, or maybe you could help them in some way. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I think everything seems like there are certain things, like maybe certain drugs or certain devices that you can use that kind of rip apart the fabric of reality. And I can't tell if it's just you tripping on drugs or if it's the fact of like maybe it's taking it down to the bare bones of what is real and what's not. Because, like, I swear, if I think hard enough, like if I'm looking at a wall or something, I'm like, these are just a bunch of atoms that are just moving at a rapid rate together. And you start thinking down
Yeah.
to that level. I mean, you can give yourself a panic attack for sure, but it's like you can really tear down the fabrics of reality. And I've heard so many stories from like my cousin to, some people that have come on the podcast talk about taking like psilocybin mushrooms or DMT and stuff. And it seems like it really puts the priority of what they need to have their life in order and kind of rips down these walls that we build ourselves up in, which I feel like that's got to be an amazing thing to be able to have that perspective. I mean, you'll never have your same perspective again after a drug trip like that. If you're telling me the fucking walls going to the floor, but like just to be able to figure out to like have that mindset of we're not the only thing out here. I think that's why I love paranormal so much, is because it creates mystery in something that at this time in our lives and in this world and society is unfucking solvable. There is no way we can capture bits and pieces, but to find a definitive answer is something like what's the answer to life? Well, everybody's going to have a different answer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's fascinating because the second you even get one question in your head, like what is the meaning of life, it becomes a plethora of all other questions. So it's almost like it is unsolvable, like you say. There's just so much to know, or so much maybe we don't even have a language for because it's not common experience. So people skirt around the edges to try to find words for their experiences. But yeah, it is fascinating if you look at life on a deep level. There's even that ayahuasca stuff. I have never experienced anything like that personally, but it seems so fascinating where people that are, when they're really like sick or like panicky, or they take this ayahuasca drug and go to a sacred place with shamans, and then they can find it within themselves to cure themselves at a molecular structure. I mean, that's a whole new ball game, really, in all of life and all of medicine when you think about it.
There was just a new book that came out. I was listening to a podcast, and the guy was an expert in toxicology. And he was talking about how, from taking, certain things, looking through history and stuff, they found these ancient Greek like chalices, these glasses that were. I'm a big Greek mythology nerd, so like Dionysus was like the god of wine and party and all this type of stuff. Well, they found these things and they found that people were drugging these glasses by testing the inside of it, not just with wine that was infused with it, but with these types of drugs. I mean, like not peyote, but what you mentioned a minute ago was in these glasses. So these people were tripping on drugs. And then you start looking at a lot of religion and they talk about Moses seeing a burning bush. Well, that was the cicada bush. And like everything seems like that would make sense that these stories through religion, people always talk about like storytelling being brought down, whisper ear to ear, passing it on to people. It ends up getting into this huge freaking morphed out thing. I'm like, either that or they were on massive drugs, and that would make sense because honestly, their morals are very, very dead on of how we should be as people. But the story is just like, you're telling me the dude prayed for two bears to come down and kill 40 kids, and that's an actual thing in the scripture of the it's not the Quran, it's the Jewish Bible. Oh, I'm gonna
Okay,
mess that
the
one up.
Torah, the Torah.
Yeah, there's a story about a guy that was being made fun of by a bunch of kids for being bald, and he prayed to God, and God sent down two bears to kill all these kids. And I'm like, what is the deep meaning behind that? And like you have to be on drugs. That seems like something in a Dr. Seuss book. But like I'm not
It does.
knocking religion at all. I'm just saying I think what the weird thing is how people wonder like, oh, that story's just made up. Was it or wasn't an experience we're hearing a log of somebody's trip or somebody's journey through a discoverment or enlightenment? I mean, Native Americans, they take the reason I won't take peyote or any of those types of drugs is because it makes you throw up and shit. I mean, a lot, which that's a
That's so
no-no
I've
for me.
heard. Yeah. Yeah, so I've heard. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, anything people will always, no matter what, as long as humans exist, want to explore the unexplorable. That's why we have such a like strong desire to go to Mars or like find the center of the world or dive down deeper and deeper into the ocean. Dive down deeper and deeper even within ourselves, really.
Do you think it's more on the lines of wanting to see like a mystery, or do you think it's more on the lines of trying to be have that feeling of discovering a first? Because I feel like everybody with creating new content nowadays, everybody with trying to find and make maybe starting a business, it's all about I want to be the first. I want to be the first. I want to be the first man on the moon, first all this, first all that, first to outer space, first to Mars, first to this. I started to look at it like, is it that feeling of new? Like when you buy a brand new shirt and you're like, oh, this is good. I have the swagger and I have the confidence to talk to anybody right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, I guess. It would vary, I think, from person to person. I mean, depending on whether they came at it with ego or just innate exploration. I mean, something intuitive within themselves where they've always wanted to go explore. No matter what, as that's part of our species, right? To always want to learn and know more. That's sort of what I think.
I just want to know how we are the ones that evolved so fast compared to every other species that was on this planet. Like our brains are so massively complicated where I look at it like, what is that? Why can some people sense emotion and sense feelings from other people when they walk by them in a store or something? And then some people don't have that at all, but then others can see colors. Like, not like, like normal people see colors, but then some people can hear colors. Some people can
Yeah.
taste color. And you're like, what is that? Like, why is there all these wires that are all, it's like looking at like a brand new computer. And I don't know about you, but when I open up my computer screen, if I spill like a coffee on it or something, I'm trying to get a hair dryer and blow the shit out or something. I open it up and I see wires, but to another person, they see how to fix the issue here. I'm just looking at it like fucking put it in rice. Fucking put it in rice.
Dry it out and put it
Mm.
in rice. Yeah, fascinating. I'm not really sure. It's interesting to think about because that's a really super deep conversation when you get down into it. What makes us all tick and what makes us all want more, to do more, to be the first, if that is what your idea is. I'm not even sure that I believe in the concept of you're the first because no matter what someone else is doing it, I mean, to say you're the first is so egotistical,
Yeah.
truthfully,
You
you
see it a
know?
lot on like anything on that happens to do with like media, whether it's news or whether it's like another podcast. Someone's like, I'm the prophet. And I'm like, what? No, I'm pretty sure some dude talked about this 5 years ago, but he just didn't videotape it. So I guess it didn't happen.
If not even like 200 or 500 or 1,000 years ago, really. I mean, yeah.
I think it'd be nice to be the first, but honestly, I think it's more about everyone's trying to leave a mark too. And I'm like, where I feel like, especially if we talk about the paranormal, being gone, dying, passing on, going on to another place, or staying on this earth and just being in a different perception that people can't perceive, what would is that seems like one of the best things of all time. Not that you're like stuck and tortured forever, but the fact of like you've left such an impact. I mean, imagine if we immediately, like I could snap my fingers right now, or somebody could snap and it flicks a switch. Next thing you know, we can see anybody who has ever died ever. and they're just standing in place like a memory, like a time slip, and you can touch onto that. And next thing you know, you get sucked up into some of their memories and some of their stuff, and you get to see, why their most of their energy is displaced right here. Why is this right here?
Yeah, then I mean, if you say it like that, then where does energy go? It doesn't ever really disappear. It would just morph or change into something else. That's my basic concept of physics, basically,
Yeah, but it's
you
weird.
know?
Like if you go to a funeral and you see somebody who's dead in a coffin, you can sense that there's nothing in there. Like it's like
Yeah.
I'm knocking, but nobody's at the door. Like that's the weirdest thing to me. It's like you can look at people and we can choose to ignore the energy they give off, but then it's like when they're fully gone and you're actually paying attention to it when you're because I don't know anybody that's in a funeral on their cell phone and like listening to like Black Eyed Peas or some shit. I'm I'm in the
No.
moment. I'm in the moment. I'm tuned in. I'm focused on one thing, and that's this person jumping out of the casket and killing me. And like the funerals I've been to, I've sat there and I looked at them, and there's just it feels like I'm looking at like a blank piece of paper. Like even though they have all the same facial features, there's just something about them that's missing. And this is when I heard a comedian talk about how he was asking his doctor about the soul. And the doctor goes, I can replace anything inside of your heart or anything in your body, your heart, your liver, anything, and you'll still be you. But then if I mess with your brain, something gets lost. Like something's just gone. And I'm like, is the spirit in the brain? We all hold, I don't know if anybody even does anymore, but putting your hand over your heart to say the Pledge of Allegiance in school. Um,
Yeah.
that over the chest, and then they're like, but your heart's in the middle of your chest, so you're actually wrong. And it's like, look, I'm just trying to fucking do what everybody else is doing. And I'm like, what is the spirit? And is there a way? I feel like most people want to ask that question is because wh- where do we want to go? What's the spirit want to fill up? I feel like everybody's spirit, everyone's grasping at something to try and fill it up, fill it whole. And even me, I'm trying to figure out what the hell my spirit wants. And that's when people turn to yoga and meditation. And I'm like, man, is the spirit just where you feel fit and what feels like it's filling it up?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's true. We're all in search of that deeper value within ourselves, trying to figure out what our spirit is. And some people just, know, but they know for themselves, and maybe that's real enough for them. But there are people that are constantly exploring that concept and trying to really understand it. How do I get a deeper version of myself? And then all the questions come into play, all the philosophical questions. Have I lived before? Will I live again? Is this human body just like an earth school? And then, I mean, so my understanding is so many religions do believe in the past lives, right? So when do you come to that end as a total fulfilled person so that your soul doesn't come back? And maybe hypothetically, say it does come back, would it come back to our earth and as we know reality, or are there other dimensions out there that are a higher level of education, so to speak? Like maybe we're all in elementary school, and then as your spirit grows, you're going to continue further. I don't know. That's
Fuck.
pretty freaking deep, but
How the hell did we get here?
I
All
don't
right.
know.
I like I like this though. Hang on a second. So, okay, there's a theory a long time ago a professor created, I think in like 1938, I want to say, probably later than that. But it's called multiple worlds theory. And it's also known as the B theory of time. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but like
No.
the A theory means that the past is gone, the present is happening, and the future is also happening all at once. So as we're talking
Okay.
right now, there's another timeline 3 hours from now where that's also happening right now. Then there's the B theory, which seems more relevant, which is the past has happened, the present is happening and the future is yet to come. So that's kind of what we're living in. We know the past is the past. But then there's like these other theories where the present, like as we're talking right now, there's the War of 1812 going on in another dimension. I'm like, what is, imagine that. Like if this is some Marty McFly shit where I'm like,
Yeah.
your brain starts going all over the place, and I start wondering like how many things in our society have happened where what would have happened if it went the other way? Are we deemed on the right track of everything supposed to lined up like fate, like the three sisters of fate with the string? Like
Yeah.
is it lined up like that, or is it like all these different things start happening? Like imagine if you could go back in time and save the Titanic, what would now be like?
Yeah, that's right. That's just unanswerable, really, in my opinion, because every time you have a new thought within yourself, or you take a different course of action, or even anything, that ripple effect doesn't open up other portals into other dimensions. So it's just like this infinite, can I say mind fuck?
Yeah,
but
it's the best word I'd use.
but yeah, crazy stuff. But I mean, there's something to be really said about like really living in the moment, and really being present in yourself and really understanding yourself as you are at that particular time. I mean, because otherwise it just gets, you're moving forward, you're moving back, you're moving forward and moving back all by being present. It's really good to just slow the hell down.
Yeah, sometimes I know people say it and it's like a lot easier said than done, but it really is pretty easy when it means just sit outside on the porch with a cup of coffee and take it in. Like it's so weird when I do these podcasts and stuff, like time flies so freaking quick. And I'm like, wow, like but then if I sit on my porch or something and I'm sipping a coffee or if I'm just listening to the trees, time goes by like very, very slowly. Like I'm taking in every single second. And I mean, I guess that just happens when you have good conversation, but the factor of like it's moving so quick, and like next thing you know, I've had people like my grandfather, like next thing you know, I was 60 and I was like, holy shit. Like he's like, I just felt like I was picked up and then jumped 20 years and then placed down. Like that
Yeah.
mindless autopilot. Like I feel like a lot of people are gonna get nostalgia off their phones because they're
Yeah,
missing major memory moments. And if you don't craft out memories, then you're not really forging your soul, I would say. You know what I mean? You're not creating
I
the
do.
things that make you you. I know that sounds corny, but it's kind of true when it comes to the whole aspect of things. I feel like at the end of your life, your soul is usually this thing that's filled up with information and filled up with like, if there is a soul, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's this code. This is you. This is I could take this, see it on a computer, and it would say the matrix code of Jennifer. You know what I mean? It would be you. But what does that get created the same if you don't ever experience anything? I feel like sometimes I talk to someone that has no knowledge at all. I mean, just living in a shelter every single day doing nothing, and then 40 years later they regret it, and you look at them like you don't seem weathered. You don't seem
yeah.
experienced. You got a 4 o'clock shadow, but I don't see the like you've been through some shit.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, like, life is very short at the end of the day, I mean, you're good to grasp things and just do what you wanna do and take risks while you're willing, or no matter what age you are, to go live your life, because I swear to you, I feel like if you talk to anybody that's laying on their deathbed, they're gonna say they wish they would have loved more, they wish they would have went more places, experienced more people, done more things in life other than, the 9 to 5 or like the TV viewing at night. Really, no one's like, oh, I wish I would have worked more. I wish I wouldn't have spent those 80 hours a week at my job, because you're not going to remember those things. Those are the things that, yes, help put bread on the table and help pay your rent or your mortgage and allow you to take fantastic trips with your family. But yeah, it's no one, I think it's wise to just have no regrets at the end of the day and never to be afraid of taking risks, because it's like you have to get out of your own way all the time if you really want to experience growth on a soulful level or on a personal level, don't you think?
I don't know how many times I've gotten in my own way of things.
Yeah, we
Oh,
all do.
I did it today. I was gonna be like, I'm gonna go get some groceries today on my day off and stock up the fridge. And then you start thinking about driving to the store. It takes 10 minutes to get out of my neighborhood. And then I go out there and what I'm just gonna spend more money when I could save it for a rainy day. And then it's like, oh, it seems like a bigger hassle. Just let me put the sweatpants back on and watch, I don't know, like Two and a Half Men is on cable right now. And I don't know for they're playing a marathon of it, and I'm in fucking love with it.
Too funny. Yeah, but you won't remember that when you're an old man.
That's true.
And knock on wood, that would, I mean, I heard this quote the other day, and it was a while ago, and I just love it. But it's like you have to honor and respect getting old because very few people make it that far, you know. So it's like I like to talk to older people a lot, especially if they've lived a life. You can learn so much from them, you know. Um, Sharing their experiences is absolutely amazing, really. Like, I'll just give you an example. There was a lady, this is years ago. I used to live in Alaska and I fought forest firefight or did forest firefighting up there. And it was a Sunday and I went to this church. It's weird, but it was actually a bar church. So you could have your whiskey and hear your sermon. Now, I'm not a religious person per se, but I'm a spiritual person. And there was a lady sitting next to me and she was 80 years old and she was sipping her whiskey and she had just come out from having a cigarette and she was just, I was like kind of fascinated by her because who sees an 80-year-old like that doing that? And she's like, oh, I just got back from polar bear hunting with my sons. And I'm like thinking, oh my god, she's 80. If she can do it at that age, I could do anything I want because I was young, I was in my 20s,
She was
so it's really fascinating to
polar
hear a
bear,
story like that. Yeah, she just went, well, the polar bear hunting, I don't know. Shout out
fucking
maybe.
writing that down for a
I know, well,
potential
okay,
guest.
don't
Holy
forget, like,
crap!
I'm older than you, so this would have been in the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Or 90s, actually, 90s.
I didn't even think about the climate thing either. Oh god, they're probably not even really around anymore. That's not a good profession to be into. But I was
Yeah, no.
interested, like, holy shit, hunting down a polar bear, like that's a panty dropper if I've ever heard one. I'm immediately like, hey, what are you doing later? Oh
But
man.
just interesting people in the world, that have experienced such amazing things.
What made you decide to do forest firefighting?
Yeah, so actually, I've always been a bit of a free thinker. I've always kind of lived life my way. I don't like to live for the man. I don't really live a normal life. Um, I was just, I don't know, kind of, I guess at one point, I just come out of the university and I was just like, had to go somewhere and go do something, different. So I went up to Alaska and fought fires, did a whole bunch of stuff. And then I ended up herding goats in France and doing a whole bunch of stuff in Germany. So just like when you open one door for yourself and you overcome one fear, your life opens up more and more and more because you're used to taking risks and you're used to doing things and you're used to living outside of your comfort zone, and that becomes comfortable. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, I've experienced that in a different way, not forest firefighting or herding goats in France. That's fucking awesome. Um, Holy crap, how annoying was that to try and get all the goats to stay in place?
Oh yeah, they're like little having 30 babies. They cry. Yeah, I just would listen to Metallica or something and turn it up really loud. Oh yeah, they're really cute.
You're
No,
listening to Temple of the Dog and you're hearing goats scream on top of that. That is amazing. I've conquered the kind of uncomfortable feeling when it came to every job I have ever experienced in my entire life. I have been the odd man out. I've been a minority. Even in my school career, I have been a loner a little bit. Never really fitting in just because how random and how like I'm basically just Robbie, which is how you can kind of put it. And that uncomfortability factor around people I've just eliminated. I've noticed that it was an issue that was when I was a kid, and then I took it out. I just worked on it so hard and tried my hardest to be like they're just people.
yeah.
um yeah, that's something. I mean, conquering fears. What was your first fear you had to really conquer to get you there?
Um, I would say this was a key moment in my life, and I've always been a semi-happy person, not that I'm twisted in the head, but like I like to see I'm very optimistic. And even if the glass is half full, sooner or later it's always going to rain. So I like to keep on the sunny side of life. I really do. Just a choice I've made. It's probably part of my soul. But I remember one day I was looking in the mirror and I was just, I had 3 years of school. I really didn't know what direction I was going to take. I love academia, I love learning, but I didn't have a focused career path in it. And there's pressure. Like, do you want to, what in society to become something and do something? And I was just looking in the mirror and I'm like, who are you? Who are you outside of what anybody else would think? And who do you want to be? So one of the things I did when I was young is I went to the travel agent. This is back in travel agent days, and I bought a one-way ticket to Germany because it was the cheapest ticket I could get. I was a college student, so I didn't have funds, and I was like, okay, cheapest ticket is ocean away was to Frankfurt, and I'm like, all right, well, I know Gesundheit, so I went. I know it sounds crazy, and it takes a little bit of but it was either what scared me more, and this was it. What scared me more was looking in that same mirror a year later and being in the same position, being the same person, being the same. Who are you? What are you doing? What have you done? What do you want to do? I didn't want to keep looking in the mirror, not knowing who I was.
That was the first fear you wanted to tackle. You didn't have that. That seems like an ending. Like for me, my first fear would be like, let me work on trying to ride a roller coaster. Then my
Okay.
inside fear, I feel like for a lot of people, much like you just mentioned, was the fear of not finding who I am. That's the
Mhm.
end. That's the end fear, the one I want to tackle. But I have to chip that tree down by taking down the smallest pegs of who am. I know there's this thing, a motivational thing, where it's like you have to write your name on the mirror or write "You are loved." I'm like, I, I,
Sorry.
I mean, well, the whole factor of like that whole thing of like you're loved on the mirror. It's like I would do that, but then it's so hard to like even reading it. It seems like wow. It's like finding that is something that's gotta be made. That's gotta be like to truly love yourself and love what you're doing. I always tell people like you could be fucking making IKEA furniture, which my buddy loves. He finds
Yep.
enjoyment in that, and that is the dumbest shit to me. But I entertain the idea because I see him, he gets happy, he builds, I built a shelf in my studio, for instance, where I put like hot sauce bottles and stuff. He he literally built it, but before he laid down a tarp, they got a screwdriver, counted out all his tools, did a log of all the nails and everything. And I'm sitting like, just fucking hit the hammer into the wall and we can get this shit done. It should be 5 minutes. He goes, you got to take your time with it and it'll last longer. Then after he builds this beautiful shelf, he sits there for 45 minutes telling me how beautiful it is. And it's like, don't you love that shelf? And eventually I just fucking knocked it down right in front of him. There's your shelf.
I shouldn't really laugh at that, but that's pretty funny.
But it's this thing of like, how do you find that type of peace and love in life, and anything that you do is what you should be aspiring for. And taking down the fears, the hardest part is for a lot of people, even for myself, is the fear of not being able to survive. And the way that our brains have linked it is to money, is to food, is to a home, is to nice things, shiny cars, a lot of the things we don't need. And my view on the world is to be like a homeless person a little bit. Not really like, living on the street, but like you look at that homeless person, you see them smear shit on a wall. Is that a homeless person that's insane smearing shit on a wall, or is it a homeless person being an artist and using the canvas as his paintbrush? Like it's this optimistic side. You got to look at things. It helps you make life a little bit better when you start noticing, wow, look at all. Can't believe another bill's coming. Or it's like, well, another bill's coming, which means I have a home to live in. Like I'm doing, like I have to work hours, obviously, but it's nice when I get home and I get to relax in something I can call mine. It's that
Yeah.
optimism switch.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and what you said, it's like if we're all grateful, first, there's two things here. Like, you don't know what that guy, homeless person on the street smearing on the wall, what's in his head? How does he feel about it? What's his experience? That's what matters to him, not us as the observer. You know what I mean? We're going to judge that no matter how, but we will never know. Maybe he loves that and he gets the ultimate oh, time just went by so fast because I was enjoying myself kind of moment, you know?
I
And
wish
then,
that was my fucking
well, I mean,
time,
I'm
Jill.
just, this is a horrible conversation that, as far as that goes. But I mean, everyone's individual experience. And then, yes, if you're working, really hard to like pay your mortgage and pay your bills, there's a point where you just have to be like grateful that bills coming in, grateful, like you said, you've got a house to live in. So it's like, that mental attitude of being like, oh, another bill, oh, another bill. It's just attracting more negativity. But if you're like, okay, thank you, electric bill. Thank you. You just allowed me to have this amazing podcast and, heat up my house and my oven so I could cook good food. It's switching and thinking about things that way.
Yeah.
Having a grateful experience.
Well, one of the easiest experiences, and you mentioned it earlier about just talking to like an older person, just
Hmm.
talking to anybody, really, even if they're a young kid, getting somebody's perspective and thoughts on things. I mean, it's one of the greatest gifts. It's also can be a curse if you let it. You can be overwhelmed at times. I've cranked out 20 episodes in a day before and I felt
Wow.
drained. Your brain feels fried, but it's so weird how a conversation, I bet before this even podcast even happened, you would have never thought in a million years this conversation would have been like this. We could have
No.
talked about anything. But
I
that's the
know.
best part is you get in a flow in a conversation with someone where it ends up taking down this turn where you can either feel energetic from it or you can feel like, what the hell just happened? Like it's that. It's about taking that connection and stuff too. But it's weird because I feel like fear is now turning into that. Fear is turning into this thing that we're afraid of conversation. We're afraid of getting to know people because it seems like the world is turning into this attack scenario. And I'm like, it's not like that. The
Yeah.
world is pretty dark and cold, but that's because it gets shown on social media that way. And
Hmm.
anybody can be that spark of light, just that go out in the world with a little bit of positivity. Don't get me wrong, I'm not positive 100% of the time, but
Oh
when I
yeah.
when I go to the store, for instance, I'm more than happy to strike up a conversation with somebody and talk to somebody about stuff.
Yeah, that's right. It comes, social media or you know, the news, it distorts reality from how it really is, I think. I mean, it shows you just a spark maybe of truth, if I even may even go so far as to say truth. But there's always good people in the world. Most people want the same thing. They want love, they want their family, they want good memories, they want a comfortable place to live, they want good food to eat. There's that human connection, and maybe, and that's what this podcast is about, recreating those connections, right? Talking to random people. Well, you won't necessarily get that if you're like closed off and you just come back from watching an hour of CNN. You might be like, goddamn world, or whatever you want to say.
And it used to be
you
this
know
this point. It used to be illegal for media sources to be able to own more than one news station because at that point you're brainwashing and you're literally changing the news to fit your description of things. That's not like happening anymore. All these media places are buying out each other, so then they're all owned by like the same corporation. It's like I'm seeing the exact same thing on this channel as I'm seeing on this channel and this channel and this channel. That's when it starts to get really bad. I mean, I look at social media and it's toxic. It's this thing that is it's this I look at it like a little demon that needs to be fed every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It's sitting in the high chair saying, feed me, feed me.
See, I have an absolutely different perspective from you. Whereas I love social media. I now make a living at social media. Like I own my own online business, and it's been amazing. I've been connecting with people all around the world during this whole pandemic. But I use it for good. I'm not gonna like, if I see something I don't really want to digest or have in my reality, I just delete it or I mark it off. What I'm looking for is miracles in the world and people that want to make a difference. And there's so much of that. There's so much subculture under there, and they're just quiet unless because they're not in mainstream news. But you have to look for it. And then you'll see that people are doing wonderful things and you're able to connect with them. So, in my opinion of social media, there's never been a better time to be alive, to connect with people that you would never in a million years have connected with before. It's an absolutely amazing
Well,
tool.
that's a positive way of looking at it because I guess I was kind of generalizing is for the public. A lot of it is not like that. A lot of it
Yeah.
is the complete opposite because it's just really, really difficult because you're trying to do something, you're trying to get your way, you're trying to get, like, I guess, your business out there or something. But then everybody else, they're scrolling through, they're seeing what everybody else has, and that's when it becomes toxic. But like, you've managed to stay above that by trying to cut out the negativity. But for a lot of people, that is really hard to do. And social media has updates to where you can, like, oh, you can just choose not to see this in your feed anymore, but then you see something else that's like, well, everything's either like a sponsored ad or something. It's like it makes you sit there and just be consumed by advertisements all day, where it's like, man, I'm just trying to chat with folks. Why do everything have, like, for instance, I've been trying to get a tarot card reader on this podcast for.
Oh, I have one for you. Oh,
Please
did you find
do.
one? I
No,
have
I need
one
one.
for you. Okay.
I want to get my
I'll hook you up.
I want to get my cards read on air, but
Totally.
every time I've messaged to somebody, it's immediately like, the ancestors are talking to you, and then I'm like, oh no, not the ancestors. And then they literally go, like, I had sent a message of it, where I literally took, well, every time I reach out, it's got to be like about the ancestors and stuff. I'm like, not the ancestors. And then, like, I literally took a screenshot of this where somebody had messaged me telling me these long paragraphs of the ancestors, and she's like, I help before, the ancestors say you're in trouble. And I'm like, they're not wrong. I'm like, pretty depressed, really not happy with life. And they're like, well, call me, or do this, or and I'll be able to help you. Are you still there? And kept messaging me. And I just go, do you take credit cards? And she goes, yes, debit or PayPal. And I'm like, that's the bullshit. I'm tired of getting that. Can I get one person that honestly believes in what they are doing and not just trying to, everything's a freaking subscription, or it's a payment or something. And I'm like, oh man, like, you work so hard and all these hours to get paid and just try and survive. And then anywhere you go that you want to enjoy or maybe try something new, it's got to be like, do you take debit cards? It's like, why is my drug dealer asking me if I take debit cards?
Oh, did you? I just saw this interesting article the other day that was about the Amazon stores, and you're now going to be able to pay with the palm of your hand by scanning it. So, like, digital days are here to stay, my friend. But it's just to go back. No, got a good tarot card reader, and so we're talking about a little bit too here about serendipitousness or serendipity. So now you're going to have this really cool, awesome person on here just because you invited me. So, like, by opening up one door, you open up many,
That's what I
you
like.
know?
And that's what leads into, like, my alternate universe theory, which is like, when we sleep, I believe our dreams are like a doorway that you open up into another realm. And when you experience what they call a hypnic jerk, where you feel like you just fell,
Yeah,
that's your body coming back to reality. And I'm like, but that's like that with conversation too. When you talk to someone, you never know where this can lead. I never knew before, messaging you. I didn't know really anything about you, but we're
that's
learning it
right.
on this podcast, and we had a great conversation from it. That's what I'm saying is, never neglect an opportunity to try something different, because different might be new, it might be a change, but for as much as everybody's fighting for change, you would think that you would take the any opportunity to try something different than your average routine. I think this pandemic, I always been asking people, what's the one thing you feel like you really changed about yourself? And I feel like for a lot of people, it was noticing that they were in this routine, and the weirdest thing was, for the first probably few weeks, they were trying to fall back in that routine, and it just wasn't working out.
Yeah. There's you always hear people talk about the new normal, or whether you like that statement or not, it's maybe something to say. I just read this the other day that it's a better normal. We have to move forward always with our thinking. Life can't go back to normal. It never will. You know, our those routines are gone now. It's time to create a new routine and do something good with it. The world needs change. So I know it's trendy and cliche to say be the change, but that's all of us can be in our own individual lives, or in our own individual families. Not necessarily that we all have to be Martin Luther King, but we can make a difference within ourselves, within our community, within our family and our own household.
All it takes is a little bit of effort and a lot of hard work.
Yep, inch by inch, it's a cinch.
I like that one.
Yeah, I heard that the other day, so I'm just repeating it. I can't take credit for it, but I've been saying it like 10 times a day.
That's a good one. I like the apple a day keeps the doctor away. Unless
That
you're a
is true.
hypochondriac, and then you really want the doctor.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, Jennifer,
That's right.
please tell everybody where they can find you at, your social media profiles, where people can find your online business and be able to meet you, maybe chat with you in person.
Yeah, if you definitely want to, feel free to reach out. I'm on Facebook because I love Facebook. I'm at Jennifer Campbell. You can search my name, but search under business pages, and then also gordonjen.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Jen the Good Life, or sorry, not Twitter, Instagram, The Good Life, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So feel free, everybody. It's
Well, I'll
been
make
marvelous, Rob. Thanks for having me. It was a
thank
blast.
thanks for coming on, and thank you for listening to this episode Out of the Blank podcast.